Hello and welcome back to Fleetwood Area High School's election coverage for the 2016 presidential election. My name is Tristan Spana. This period, our panel discussion will focus on civil rights. There are 80 electoral college votes up for grabs as Washington, Utah, Montana, California, Alaska, and Idaho will be voting. The polls have officially closed in Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, South Dakota, North Dakota, Oregon, and Wyoming. And we have the results for some of these polls now. First up, Arizona was represented by Mr. Kachinaz's 7th period class. Those electoral votes have been awarded to Clinton with the final vote of 12-7. Trump will claim Colorado in its 9 electoral votes. Ms. Nagel's 7th period class has voted 10-8, placing the state firmly with Trump. Moving on, we have Mr. Carr's 7th period voting for the state of New Mexico. Tiger TV is confident in reporting its 5 electoral votes to go to Trump by a margin of 4. Ms. Jarasinski's 7th period represented North Dakota and went to Trump in a narrow victory. South Dakota's 3 electoral votes, decided by Ms. Hefner's 7th period, goes to Trump by a 4-2 margin of victory. Mr. Weiss's 7th period voted for the state of Wyoming. They voted 9-8 to give 3 electoral votes to Trump. Finally, faculty voting represented the state of Oregon, and its 7 electoral votes went to Clinton. This period, our panel discussion will focus on civil rights to see if the topic of civil rights is on the minds of the voters. We'll kick it over on Election Day correspondent Bianca Javaria for more. Bianca?
Thanks, Tristan. In Georgia, 75% of the voters polled believed in same-sex marriage and on the abortion issue or pro-choice. I'm here with Anna Grayek, and I wanted to ask you, do you think it's possible for Trump to win the election while losing 80% of the black vote?
I don't think it's possible for him to win the election because I think Hillary will win all of those voters because, I don't know, he's not going to get any of those voters because of his racist views, and I think he's extremely racist. I don't think that it's possible for him to get any of those votes.
All right, thanks, Anna. You can head back to Tristan.
Thanks, Bianca. Moving on to this period's panel discussion. Just to review, each period will be welcoming 2 student experts who've done extensive research on the topic of the period. They're here for a conversation on real issues, and the points that they argue are not necessarily aligned with their own political views. This period, our panelists are Alyssa Hall, representing the Clinton campaign, and Shane Burt, representing the Trump campaign. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So this period, we're addressing the issue of civil rights. Dominating news cycles, it seems every few months are stories about police shootings and possible corruption and racism within our police forces around the country. Just this week, there was a shooting in Iowa where a police officer was abused. Obviously, there are far more good cops out there, but even still, what can we do to start to address some of these concerns about the police accountability? Shane?
Okay, to start off, I would like to ask my opponent, do you think that the majority of police officers are good people?
Yeah.
So you would agree that the majority are good people?
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to let that be known. I think it interesting then that the Union of Police Officers endorsed the Republican candidate for president, who is Donald Trump, of course. And so what does that shed light on Donald Trump as? I think it shows that the police officers, as a whole, trust Donald Trump to be a better president, to enforce law, to, like Donald Trump says, create law and order. And if the police officers are trusting Trump, and the police officers, like you said yourself, are good people, why do you not think that Donald Trump would be the best president as far as civil rights go? Now, I would also like to say, I'll let you answer that in a little bit. I would also like to say that probably the biggest plague facing our society right now, as far as civil rights, is the demonization of police officers. And I think it is such a sickening issue that tons and tons of people are demonizing these police officers. I know police officers personally, and I know that they're good people, and I think it ridiculous that they would be demonized, which is what I've seen over and over again. There are popular songs in our communities, such as F the Police and stuff like that. And it is laughable, but it also does show a light that society as a whole does not trust police officers, even though they are doing the right thing. And so I think every time one of these shootings occurs, we can't be demonizing these police officers, because simply they are good people. Even if there is a mistake, which there sometimes is, which I think we can both agree on, that there are mistakes that police officers make. But I think as a whole, we should not demonize these police officers, which is what Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party is tending to do. I think that police officers are, like Donald Trump has said, are some of the worst treated people in our society today. So I think every time that something happens, we can't have these Twitter outbreaks, these massive riots saying that police officers are racist, that there's institutional racism, because I think it's simply not true, and it is something that is being over-exaggerated and is leading to a lot of bad things happening in our communities.
Alyssa, response?
All right, now it's my turn. Well, that's just the thing. A lot of police officers are being demonized because of the cruel acts that have happened from bad cops. And it is sad to see how many good cops are being treated terribly because of the few bad ones. But Hillary plans to budget $1 billion in her first budget just for police retraining, which is important because we need to get the trust back in the law enforcement system, because they tend to be a good thing for America. But one thing you pointed out is that it's not really a matter of race, which it is. Trump himself is racist. His parents were KKK members. He was endorsed by the KKK. KKK is a little racist, if you wanted to put it that way. It's kind of weird to see that so many people are taking advantage of the system, and they're saying that it's not racist when it's actually, hold on, I have a statistic here. 59% of arrests or killings in Minneapolis, Minnesota, are black people. So it's obviously more than half. It's not necessarily just white people being shot. It's not good.
Okay, so you use that statistic that majority of the arrestings are of black people, and I think that it's fair to assume that they committed reasonable crimes, and they are put on trial for it. Everybody can agree that if you are arrested for a crime, there's a very good chance that you did something wrong. So you can't, I think what some people are trying to say, like, oh, look, these people are being targeted like animals, but really they are committing crimes, and like you said, they are committing crimes, and police officers are being demonized once they control these crimes. It is true that 13% of the population does commit 52% of the crime, and it's not just not just unreasonable crimes, not just people being pulled off the street and thrown into prison for nothing or killed for nothing, because some crimes are reasonably committed. And I think it's silly to accept or to try to accept that that's not true. There is definitely a bias against police officers, and I think we can both agree on that. And what this bias has led to is people becoming racist against whites, people hating police officers. The 5 men in Dallas who were killed, they were police officers. They did nothing wrong. They were just patrolling, and they were assassinated, 5 of them. At their funeral, Barack Obama came to it, and he tried to link their funeral processions, these men who had just been killed. And he says that, and he started bringing up things about Black Lives Matter, something like that. So, trying to always bring up this thing, this is something that Democrats are doing. Every time there's an election, they come around to the black community, to the minority communities, and they're saying, hey, the Republican community or Republican Party is so against you. Look at what's happening here. Look at what's happening here. And they're going to say, we will help you. We will fix this. But if you look at the past 8 years, I would like to ask the American people and Fleetwood High School, have the past 8 years been good for race relations? And anybody can agree that the answer is no. And so I think it shows that these Democratic politicians are giving lip service, and when it actually comes down to it, nobody is doing anything about fixing the conditions in the black community. Nobody's doing anything to decrease the demonization of police. In fact, Obama is inciting it because it will give him more recognition, and he is seen as a great savior to bring these races together, but I think he's done nothing but pull us apart.
Would you like to respond and move on to the next question?
All right. Well, you can believe what you want. As you can see, there's no one better qualified than 2 middle-class white people to talk about Black Lives Matter. All right, that's all I've got.
We spoke earlier this morning about both candidates' position on Muslim refugees entering the country. I'm interested in your thoughts on Muslims currently living in the United States. Is there anything we can do or needs to be done to ensure their safety? Alyssa.
All right, I've got a lot on this. All right, so accepting Syrian refugees is a good thing. As of right now, we've accepted 10,000 Syrian refugees. And if we hadn't, there's a good chance that something more like the Holocaust could happen again. It's also kind of sad to believe that a lot of people think refugees are just here to bomb America and terrorize the American society. But actually, since 9/11, there have been hundreds of thousands of refugees that have come into the country, and only 3 of them have been arrested for terrorism. So there's just as many suspected terrorists in like maybe Berks County or even Pennsylvania than there are refugees that have come to America. Because, let's face it, there's an easier way to come to America and try to bomb us than there is by getting refugee status. You could get a vacation visa, which takes 2 days to 2 months, or you could try to be a refugee, which takes anywhere from 18 to 24 months to obtain that status. And a lot of people believe that there's not a good way to get refugee status, like it's not tough enough maybe. But actually how it works is that potential refugees, which are Syrian citizens, not ISIS members or anything like that, these are citizens like men, women, and children that live in Syria, that are living in places like Aleppo that get bombed almost every single day. They're recommended by the UN to the Department of Homeland Security, which is a good department in America because, let's face it, how many terrorist attacks has America had since 9/11?
A few.
Not as many as there were a long time ago.
When?
There weren't any large ones like 9/11 since 9/11
That's true.
by Syrians. It's mostly
In
homegrown.
America, yes.
And yes, in America, because of the good work that the Department of Homeland Security is doing. So after they're screened by the UN, then they're screened by the Department of Homeland Security, and there is a testimony from someone who works for the Department of Homeland Security that says that it is a harder, tougher screening process for Syrian refugees that are trying to come to America. So that's that.
Shane?
Okay, well, the question was to prevent discrimination against these Muslims, and I think that there is a problem with discriminating against Muslims. And why is because they're seen in a negative light because of what people in their religion have been doing. Terror bombings, mass executions, stuff like that. And it is true that a majority of Muslims are good people. But I think what's important to do is to try to get out of our heads that Muslims are bad people, because they are not all bad people. And if there are less terror attacks in the United States, less people think Muslims are bad. Is that true? Yes. So if we can reduce terrorism, which Donald Trump, and I was polling just earlier today, and almost everybody agrees that Donald Trump will be better about securing terrorism. So I think if we wanted to answer your question, to reduce discrimination against Muslims, is follow Donald Trump's plan to keep the dangerous Muslims out, because then that will reduce the number of terrorist attacks, which will in turn raise people's images of Muslims. And I think one thing that's also important is to check up on there's got to be a system in place so that Muslims, if they see anything suspicious, maybe in their mosques, maybe in their daily lives, that they can report it, because a lot of times people are afraid to report things, and nobody really reported anything prior to the days of the shooting at the Orlando nightclub, which was a huge tragedy, and I feel so bad for the people who were slaughtered there and for their families. But that attack came because there is not enough telling of other people if you see anything suspicious. So I think decreasing oppression of these Muslims will best be helped if we have increased telling of authorities if they see anything suspicious.
All right, so that's pretty true. It's actually a peaceful religion, Islam. There's 5 tenets, and that's declaration of their God, prayer towards Mecca 5 times a day. They're required to do charity work, and then they fast, kind of like Catholics. And then they have a pilgrimage to Mecca, which is where their religion started. And it is important to note that not all Muslims are terrorists. Actually, it's only 0.002% of all Muslims that are radical Islams.
I think that's actually false.
That's actually
and Ben
a
Shapiro
real
debunked
statistic.
this, because do you know what Sharia law is?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what it entails? That, and Ben Shapiro outlined this very well. He's a very smart man, but there was a research survey done across all countries, Muslims, and it showed that many of them, very large percentages, alarming percentages, believed that terror killings were sometimes okay, that killing women was sometimes okay, bombings were sometimes okay, were justifiable, and this is radicalism. Radicalism is in any way believing that that's okay. Like, would you believe that, do you think if I were to say that sometimes terror bombings are okay, would that I would be a radical? Yes. So if I were to say that, yes, I'm a radical. So it was shown that many of these people, it's a myth that a very, very, very small percentage are radicalized, because it's actually a very large percentage are radicalized by definition. Not all are terrorists. In fact, you're probably right, very, very, very few are probably terrorists, but there are many radicals in Islamic faith.
Well, there's actually a large amount of Christians who are radical too. There's people like the KKK, who I've mentioned earlier. And one question I have is, if it was such a big deal to get rid of Osama bin Laden, to kill him, why isn't it such a big deal to get rid of the Grand Wizard of the KKK? Because that's just as big of a problem when it comes to religious beliefs. Because both the Bible and the Quran both promote violence in some senses.
Okay, I'd like to thank you. And I just wanted to say one last statement real quick. To all the voters who voted today, thank you for voting. And to all the people who in this high school and anybody who's seeing this who's voting today, I would like to ask you, will things increase in conditions if we have 4 more years of what Obama is doing regarding race relations, if we're talking here today about race relations? We have seen increased riots, and this is not an uprising, this is just destruction of property, it's lack of morals. If you want to see this continue, vote Hillary Clinton. But if you want to see the black communities, if you want to see minority communities, if you want to see terrorism decrease, please vote for Trump today. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, that wraps up our panel discussion. So thank you both for your time. Thanks for your insight throughout the day. That brings our discussion to a close. As things wind down here with voting, let's head back to the polls with Mina Isaac. Mina.
Thanks, Tristan. I'm here with Nick Damian from Mr. Carr's 8th period government class. Nick, 66% of the voters in Minnesota thought that they should have open borders. Do you agree with that?
Well, Mina, I feel like due to high levels of immigration, I feel that people should close the borders like Trump, and that people should really try and lower the levels of immigration to keep the American workers getting their American jobs and to keep the American dream to its word.
Thanks, Nick. Now we're going to kick it back to Tristan for the final time. Tristan?
Guys. Thank you, Mina. We'll be back in a few moments to call the remaining states. Voting this period throughout the day were Alaska, California, Idaho, Montana, Washington, Hawaii, Iowa, and Nevada. There are still 96 votes yet to award. Stay tuned to this stream. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. Welcome back. We're about to wrap up to the coverage for the day, but first let's award the final electoral votes in today's mock election. First up, Alaska, represented by Mr. Weiss's 8th period class. Those 3 electoral votes have been awarded to Trump. Trump will claim California and its 55 electoral votes. Ms. Jarasinski's 8th period class voted 12-5, placing the state firmly with Trump. Moving on, we have Mr. Carr's 8th period class voting for the state of Montana. Tiger TV is confident in reporting its 3 electoral votes will go to Clinton by a margin of 2. Mrs. Rankin's 8th period class represented Utah and went for Clinton in a wide victory. Washington's 12 votes decided by Mr. Kachanaz's 8th period goes to Trump by a 7-5 margin of victory. Faculty voted during 8th period voted for the state of Iowa. The vote was tied, so we'll split those votes 2-2. Throughout the day, other faculty and administration students have been voting to decide 3 remaining states. Nevada was represented by all students without a current history class. They voted 42-6, awarding the 6 electoral votes to Trump. Hawaii and its 4 electoral votes were represented by the administration they favor in Clinton's. Finally, support staff voted throughout the day represented Iowa. Those 6 electoral votes ended up being in a tie, so they will be split 3-3. That brings our final tally to 407 electoral votes in favor of Trump and 131 electoral votes in favor of Clinton. Tiger TV can officially announce that Donald Trump has won the Fleetwood High School mock election. Thank you for everyone who stuck with us throughout the day. I'm Tristan Spaneth. Have a good night.